We hope you enjoy this episode of the Modern Divorce Podcast. But first, an important message for our listeners.
Embarking on a new chapter? Zach Nutzman of the Darwin Wall team at Realty One Group is your go-to real estate expert in Arizona, specializing in guiding couples and families through their real estate needs while experiencing a divorce. Modern Law's trusted partner, Zach, brings expertise, confidence, and compassion to your real estate journey. Let him help you navigate this challenging time. Zach Nutzman, your modern solution in real estate. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Modern Divorce Podcast. I'm your host, Billie Tarascio. Today, another special edition. We have another local candidate running for office, and this time he is running for sheriff. Mike Crawford, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Bill.
No problem. No problem. Okay, so we're going to dive into what it means to run for sheriff, what area you would cover, how often these elections take place, and ultimately why you decided to run. So let's start there. Mike, why did you decide to run for sheriff?
So it's kind of interesting. Actually, this is one of the last things I thought I'd ever do. I was working in law enforcement as a police officer and getting near retirement. I served for a little over 28 years in law enforcement after my military career, and 3 adult children, 6 grandchildren. Was looking forward to, we like to go off-roading and stay out in the country. We have a couple of dogs. We're remodeling our house. We were just talking about before we went on air. I have a lot of projects. I'm a mechanic on the side, and I just like to have projects and stay busy, motorcycles, hot rods, things like that. And we bought our house about 8 years ago. I have 6,000 square feet of garage. So a lot of area to do projects and hot rodding and things like that. And was looking forward to just doing dune buggies and dirt bikes with the grandkids and stuff like that. And we got to, my wife is very involved in politics, and we got to looking at what's going on in our community and in our county and with the sheriff's office, and talking to people in politics. And they said, Mike, why don't you run for sheriff? Because the sheriff's office is a mess. And I looked at him, and my initial reaction was, heck no, you're crazy. I would never do that. And then we got to looking at things, and we prayed a lot, and God just kind of put it on my heart to really think about it. And I think it was about 2018, into 2018, we started really looking at it. And Jamie and I talked a long time, and we said, hey, we could do this. We could pull this off. But what's it going to be like? So I talked to a very dear friend of mine that's a sheriff down south of Maricopa County. He's now running for Senate, Mark Lamb. And some of the first questions I asked him was, what is this like for the family? How does this impact your family? Because that was my first concern. Wasn't myself, I could handle it. But what does it do to your family when you run for political office? And he said, man, it's going to be hard, and we talked about my kids are adults. Our youngest child is 27. So they're a little older, so it's not like they're going to be pressured in school or anything like that, bullying or anything, or have to do with a lot of the social pressures with social media now. So we decided, we're going to go for it. We talked to the kids and the grandkids, and they said, go for it, Dad. You can do it. You were a great guy. You're a good cop. Do it. So we decided, we're going to give it a shot.
Awesome.
So I ran we started our campaign in 2019 for the 2020 cycle. Mm-hmm. And not ever running for office before. Mm-hmm. And we did really well. We had a grassroots campaign. It was pretty much Jamie and I, and a really dear friend of ours, Debbie, as a volunteer, and some good friends jumped in to volunteer, and we went out door knocking and face to face. And COVID kind of shut us down at the end. We weren't able to get out as much and meet as many people, but a lot of people really got to know my name, and I got over 114,000 votes, I believe, in the primary. I lost by 10 points against some big names, Joe Arpaio and Jerry Sheridan. I'm running against him again. He went on to win the primary, but lost in the general election. But it gave us a real good sense of what it was like to run. It introduced me to the voters, and we learned a lot of little things in that campaign on how to run and what we didn't know. You don't know until you don't know what you don't know. So we learned a lot of little things that have made huge improvements this time. Some changes we've made, and kind of got us to do better this time. Not really a practice run, but an introduction to campaigning.
Okay. So is the sheriff's term 4 years then?
Yes. Sheriff's terms are 4 years.
And is this a nonpartisan race?
So the job should be nonpartisan, but the race is partisan.
Okay.
There are Democrats, Republicans, independents can run, Green Party, anybody.
Okay. And so what is your political affiliation?
My political affiliation is Republican, and currently there are 3 Republicans on the primary ticket and 2 Democrats on the primary ticket. So
okay. All right. So the primary is in July.
It was August 6th, which was incredible because that's my birthday. It was going to be a great birthday present, but they stole it from me, and they moved it up a week to July 30th. So
got it. July 30th. Interesting. Okay. So my audience is mostly local and for the first time paying attention to local politics, specifically Maricopa County Attorney's Office, Gilbert PD, and they're most specifically concerned about teen violence in our area.
Correct.
That is the biggest concern for my audience and for parents like me. What are your thoughts on what we are seeing with regards to teen violence?
So a lot of it is maybe new to some of the viewers, but as a law enforcement officer, I started in law enforcement in 1992. It's not a new trend. It has gone on a bit in the past. Back, I think it was about 10, 12 years ago in Glendale, we had a similar situation. There was another group way up here in the very North Valley in one of the most affluent neighborhoods in Arizona, in Arrowhead Lakes area, in a very, very popular, rich neighborhood, church community as well, similar to Gilbert area where this occurred, with the Gilbert Goons. And they even had a sillier name. I don't know where these kids come up with this, but they were the Fluffy Bunny Crew.
I've heard of them.
Yes. So
and I
heard how to deal with it.
That the reason they picked their name is so people would have to say I was beat up by the fluffy bunnies.
Yeah, and this was at the very beginning of social media, which I think fuels some of it. But they were dealing drugs, they were stealing cars, they were beating people up. Some of it all started at school. They were all school friends, they all grew up together. They get, how in school they click off, there's the jocks and the nerds and the cheerleaders and the popular girls, the not popular girls, whatever. But, and, back in my day, it was the stoners and the heads and the heavy metal kids. And, it's been that way forever. They click off. But there's always this one clique of these kids that think they're tough, and they get some butt-headed ideas. And it's that gang group mentality where they start feeding off each other's egos. And it's just like riots or anything else, where one person wouldn't do something that stupid. When you get 2 or 3 people, the intelligence quotient is halved, and they start doing things that are really stupid. And it's that gang mentality, and it's a human nature thing, but it's been going on for a long time. One of the big things we can do, and one of the things I would like to do as sheriff, is target the youth with a mentoring program. And one of the plans I have with the posse system that I want to bring back with our volunteer programs is a youth posse. And when I was in high school, I got in trouble too. I did stupid things. I was a kid, that's when you're supposed to make mistakes, is when you're young, so you can learn from them. And our justice system is built to allow kids to learn before they do some really stupid things, kind of like these kids did. But so your record can be expunged, and when you're a juvenile, you can make mistakes as long as they're not really big mistakes. But you can make mistakes and learn from them. We're supposed to learn from our mistakes and grow a way out of it. But I want to use the youth posse system as a mentor program in our schools, like a youth club, to get these kids to volunteer and have a mentor program where we can mentor the kids, and give them some guidance and leadership,
Got it. Okay. So you had mentioned earlier that you saw that there were a lot of problems with the sheriff's department currently. What are those problems?
Oh, there's a lot to name. One is the budget. They're spending, in the last probably 8 years, the budget has doubled, more than doubled. In say 2016, the budget for the sheriff's office was a little over 300 million. Now it's over 700 million. We actually have less deputies and less detention officers employed by the sheriff's office. This county has grown exponentially every year. Our sheriff's office has not grown to meet the same standard as our population of our county. As the population grows, it's natural. The crime rate grows as well. Well, with the population growing, the crime rate growing, law enforcement has not grown to meet that challenge. The budget's grown. We're still spending massive amounts of money, but we're not getting the same services we're supposed to. If you look at the population rate, family of 4 is paying almost double what they used to for law enforcement services. That has to be changed. We cannot continue this way.
What's the money being spent on if it's not being spent on officers?
Exactly.
I mean, is it facilities? Are we buying more expensive cars? Where's the money going?
I'd like to know. Well, one of the first things I want to do is audit the sheriff's office. I'd like to bring in the Water Institute and break everything down line by line, every purchase, and put it online. It's your money. It's my money as a taxpayer, and I would like to know where that money's gone. It hasn't all gone to COVID. They've hired and made more positions for supervisors since 2016. Who are they supervising? We have less deputies. Why do we need more supervisors? Some of these supervisory positions are paying over $200,000 a year. Who are they supervising? Why do we need more supervisors if we have less workers? That is simple math. It doesn't add up to me. I'm a conservative person. I don't waste my money. I'm on a pension. I'm in the check of the month club now. I'm very proud of it. I did retire, but I don't waste my money. I'm sure not going to waste yours. I want to know where that money's going. Do we need those extra supervisors, or can we get rid of that supervisor and hire 2 deputies in place of that one person that's not supervising anybody? You know what I mean? We need to look at where this money is going, and we need to look at, are we spending this responsibly, this taxpayer money? Another huge problem is we've been under a lawsuit, the Melendrez lawsuit, DOJ oversight, since about 2007. That's costing the county taxpayers $40 million a year. So far, we've spent over $300 million on that one lawsuit. We have to stop that.
Can you explain a little bit more what's the background on the lawsuit?
So it started in about 2007, and it was initiated by plaintiffs in Maricopa County that were being profiled due to their race.
Okay.
And it was illegal immigration roundups being done by the sheriff's office. The sheriff's office and the county taxpayers lost that lawsuit, and the district court ordered that the DOJ come in and oversee the sheriff's office and gave them enumerated tasks that they had to meet. Once these enumerated tasks were met, then the lawsuit would time out and go away. They still haven't met all those tasks. We're still not 100% in compliance.
Okay.
Now, that oversight's done by the ACLU and an independent monitor. The ACLU gets $13 million a year in taxpayer money, and so does the independent monitor. And it's been going on so long that it keeps getting modified and modified. The lawsuit's completely out of its original scope now, and it's become its own self-eating monster, basically.
Who decides when the conditions are met?
The judge.
Okay. And does the Maricopa County Sheriff's Department go in front of the judge each year, or how does that work?
Anytime, well, it's not on a regular schedule. Anytime a task comes up that, say, the sheriff's office believes it's met the components of a certain task, they sit down with the DOJ, the ACLU, and the monitor. They go over the points to believe back and forth, and if they believe that those points have been met, and if the judge agrees, then he signs off on it, and then they have to maintain that level of compliance for 3 years, and then it goes away.
What are the remaining tasks that they have not met?
So as far as I can tell, the only thing left is internal affairs. They had to get things like body cameras. There was a whole system around the body cameras that had to be done to make sure that the officers were acting appropriately. There was statistical analysis on traffic stops, racial profiling training, statistical analysis on racial profiling, a whole lot of things around traffic stops, because that was the main focus of the lawsuit. Was traffic stops were being done and people were being profiled, initiated around traffic stops. So that's where it initially started. And then another large portion of the lawsuit focused on internal affairs investigations. There were investigations that were being covered up. Internal affairs investigations weren't being handled appropriately. So right now, all that's left is internal affairs. There's a big backlog of investigations. Internal affairs investigations are supposed to be wrapped up within 90 days. There's some cases right now, I believe, with the sheriff's office that are over 1.5 years old.
Wow.
That aren't being handled appropriately. There are some investigator positions that haven't been filled to catch up on those investigations from the previous sheriff. And he was penalized for that. Some of that cost us over $1 million a month in fines on top of what we were already paying. So it's been a large contention of how that's been dealt with. And I have a plan to go in there and get those positions filled, bring in some temporary personnel that are fully qualified and vetted and agreed to by the monitors, and we'll get that backlog caught up. And we can get away from this lawsuit and get out from under that huge burden on the taxpayers. So that will be spent more responsibly as well.
Yeah, I mean, certainly I can understand how the budget would be in bad shape.
Yes.
If we're paying out all these fines, and also like if they need to hire internal affairs, then those are not deputies, right? They're not out on the street. So what a mess.
It is a mess. And it's not just a mess that the deputies are under a lot more stress and having to deal with it, because if a deputy is under internal affairs investigations, they can't promote, they can't transfer to another department. So if they're, if say you're a deputy and you've been at the sheriff's office for 4 or 5 years and you've gotten a great job offer in another state, say family wants to move, you can't go to another department. You can't transfer. Say Phoenix wants to hire you and give you a big raise. You can't. Nobody can hire you if you're under internal affair investigation. And some of these investigations are ridiculous. I know there was a deputy that was being investigated because she was on her lunch break in a restaurant, and I don't know if she was on her phone or talking with another deputy, but somebody called to complain that she was laughing too loud and was being rude. They thought it was rude, and they called to complain. That investigation went over 1 year.
What?
That's absurd. But because they're under the monitoring, they have to go through a very strict set of steps on investigations that they cannot deviate from. Now, normally with a normal department that's not under this DOJ oversight, a supervisor could talk to that citizen and say, why do you think it was rude?
Sure.
Talk to them like a person. And they're not set by a certain set of standards that they have to go through a full gambit of everything and all these 20 steps of an investigation. They can talk to the person and reason with them and say, why do you think that was rude? That's not a violation of our policy necessarily. Could the officer call you and apologize and come to a reasonable agreement? MCSO is not allowed to do that. It may have been a misunderstanding.
Mm-hmm.
MCSO is not allowed to have any misunderstandings. They have to go through the full 20 steps. Well, they have to do that on everything, every little thing. That any complaint that comes in, they have to go through the full 20-step process. And it's become so burdensome, it's caused this huge backlog.
Hey there, co-parents. It's Billie Tarascio with Modern Law, and let me tell you about our Family Wizard, our preferred co-parenting app. It's a game changer. I use it myself. With features like documented calls, secured messaging, shared calendars, and more, our Family Wizard makes co-parenting smoother than ever. Trust me, I've seen the difference that it can make. Join the over 1 million parents and family law professionals who trust our Family Wizard to make co-parenting easier. Ready to take some stress out of co-parenting? Head to ourfamilywizard.com/modern law. So is it fair to say your number one priority is doing whatever it takes to get rid of the ongoing monitoring?
Well, and it's not just to get rid of the lawsuit. It's to bring the sheriff's office in compliance.
Sure.
Everything that was named in that lawsuit, I believe the sheriff's office should have been doing from the beginning.
Sure.
It's what every department in the Valley does. I worked for Glendale for 23 and a half years, the city of Glendale as a police officer. We were an accredited agency. Accreditation is you have to prove that you're way above the mark, not just at par. You have to be way above par. So we had a certain team of accreditation, a team come in and they look at your policies. They check your inventory of your weapons, your vehicles, everything. They go through where is this line item at, and you have to go show them it's where it's supposed to be. They go out and do ride-alongs with officers, and they say, hey, this policy says this, and they read you half the policy. You'd have to tell them what the other half of the policy says. So you have to know your policies and procedures, and you have to show them policies and procedures, and they test every employee on everything. And you have to show that you're way above standard. MCSO's never been at standard, let alone above standard. So I come from an agency where we were way above standard, and I would love to go to MCSO and show them how to be way above standard. And because I know they can attain it, they've just never had anybody there who knows how to do that.
Okay. How long ago did you retire from being an officer?
3 years ago.
Okay. So not that long ago. I want to ask you, if you don't mind, most of my audience is most interested in what's happening in Gilbert and with the Gilbert Goons situation and with the police. And I'd love to get your opinion, because the people have this crisis of faith in police, mostly in the police chief, and the police chief has been the one that's, really the spokesperson for Gilbert PD. And his position has been, we did everything right. There's no reason to do an outside investigation or an internal audit. We did everything right. And then you've got the media, like today there was an article by Robert Anglin. Let me just read the headline because I
missed that. I didn't see that.
Okay, so here's the headline: 95 assaults, 29 arrests. Gilbert Goons videos raise question on lack of police action. And this article goes through and it names each incident, how many attackers, how many people were arrested. And so none of that is helping this crisis of faith.
Right.
Can you shed some light on, from somebody who's worked in an agency that did have a very good reputation on the other side of the valley, like what's the path forward here for Gilbert PD?
Well, and Glendale was an awesome department, but we didn't do everything right every time. You just can't. Gilbert faced a lot of challenges, and Creek was in on it too. Some of the stuff happened over there. They faced some challenges, and I'm not going to criticize the chief. That's a hard job, and being the sheriff is going to be a hard job too. The buck stops here, and I think he's taking responsibility is a good thing. But you just can't do everything right. It's just not possible. You try to, you strive for it, and it's a good goal, but things happen. We're people. They did face some really difficult challenges. I've read through, KTAR had a great article about the situation and went through the timelines of everything. I've read through that several times, and I've read a lot of the articles in different papers and some of the different things that have come out on the situation. I was not involved in it in any way. I've talked to a few people at the county attorney's office. I have some friends over there still. It was just, that's a hard one. A lot of the challenges were a lot of the things, all those assaults. I think about half of them didn't get reported until after the publicity came out.
Right.
About, whenever the young man was killed.
Right.
And then other kids were like, oh yeah, well, I got beat up by those guys too. And, then reports started really flooding in. So that was a whole new set of challenges for them, because they were focused on the death of a young man that was killed at that Halloween party. Mm-hmm. And then all these other reports start flooding in. So now they're having to backtrack. Mm-hmm. And they're having to do all these investigations and different interviews, and they're old. Some of them were over a year old, and trying to tie everyone together. Then you're dealing with high school kids, a lot of them. And, some of these stories are old. So you're having to sort through old memories and stories and what's true and what's not. And some of it's just memory problems. It's not that somebody's intentionally telling you something that's not true, but somebody heard something. So now you're having to decipher, is it something that they saw, or is it something they heard from somebody else? So you got to try and figure that out. And then all the social media stuff that they had to go through, and search warrants on phones, and dealing with phone companies and internet companies and Twitter and Facebook. Law enforcement challenges in dealing with those types of social media companies is absurd. They are very, very, very difficult to deal with, and sometimes impossible. You can give them a search warrant and they still won't comply. So they have to go other routes with actually getting search warrants on phones. Kids go through phones, so sometimes that stuff is lost, and you're having to pull stuff out of the cloud, which is very difficult with phone companies. So, they have to go through a lot of challenges, and you can't just write a search warrant and then grab something. You have to write the search warrant, go to the judge. Sometimes they have you change things. It's not an easy process. It's not a 30-minute TV show, dong, and nobody goes to the bathroom. Nobody takes a lunch break in that 30-minute TV show, crime series. The wheels of justice turn slow, because we have to work really hard to establish probable cause and make sure that everything's put together properly. And I think they said the police report was 1,800 pages.
It's 1,162.
Okay.
So
yeah, I read it a couple of times.
That's Queen Creek. That's
Yeah.
Queen Creek's police department. That's Queen Creek's police report. And these, 95 assaults, the vast majority of them were in Gilbert.
All right. Okay.
And the last arrest was February 11th. So there was this spree of arrests in January and early February, and then it's just really stopped. Now, one of the things that victims are hearing from police is the prosecutors won't prosecute this. I can't follow up on this request, whether it's whatever it might be, loitering or trespassing in the garage, or doing donuts in downtown Gilbert garage, and cops are like, we're not going to do anything with this because the prosecutors aren't going to do anything. Is that an issue for police?
That's another set of challenges. So they're two separate entities. The police, and it's a separation of powers. The government was built that way for checks and balances. So the police can't just go. So I lived in England. A police officer can pull you over, give you a breathalyzer, and if you're if it says you're drinking, they take your license right there and you go to jail. And then the judge sees you and tells you what your fine is, and you get your license back a year later.
Wow.
That's it. Period. Now, obviously, justice works different here. We have different checks and balances. Our government was built that way. There's separating powers. So as police, we can't just run the gamut and, judge and jury right on the side of the street. You're walking down the street with your keys in your hand and you're drunk, you're DUI, we take your car, we take your license, and, the judge gives you a fine and you're done. We have a whole legal system here. And we, as law enforcement, can do the best job we can, gather all the evidence we can, make the best case we can. And then it goes to the prosecutor. The prosecutor looks at it and, they went to law school and they passed the bar. They decide separately from the police if it's a good case and if they can take it to court and win. Mm-hmm. If they don't think they can win, they may not file.
Mm-hmm. But my question is, does the prosecutor's position on X, Y, or Z impact how law enforcement conducts their job, or is it fully separate? Because it should be separate, I think.
It should. It is. And it's not perfect, but it is the best legal system in the world. Mm-hmm. And I had the blessing of living all over the world mm-hmm. and seeing different legal systems, different mm-hmm. governments, and other ones are great, but ours is better. The way our checks and balances are set up are better. Now, as a law enforcement officer, you get a lot of years under your belt and you get a sense of what's going to fly and what's not.
Okay.
And you see it often enough and you're like, I could write this up and send it through. I know it's going to go nowhere.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bother.
Okay. So that's what we're honest hearing. With you. Yeah. Yeah.
And we're people, and I'll tell you straight up, this is technically a crime. Mm-hmm. And I can write it up and spend all this time on it, knowing full well it's going to go nowhere. And I'm mm-hmm. going to tell you right now, it's going to go nowhere. Mm-hmm. I'll write the report, mm-hmm. but I'm not even going to bother filing it because it's going to go nowhere. And I'll be dead up honest with you. That's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And that happens.
That's what we're hearing. And so part of the criticism of the police may be more appropriate on the county attorney office or the prosecutor's office, just depending on what their policies are for charging.
Right. Well, and it's life. And we get criticized for it all the time, and I'll take that. But it sometimes, you can't make everybody happy all the time. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it doesn't seem fair, and sometimes it's just not. Mm-hmm. But sadly, that's the way it is sometimes. I wish if it were a crime and, that 2-cent bubble gum shoplifting is not going to get prosecuted. It is technically a crime. Yes. And I can write them a ticket for it and it's going to go nowhere. So most of the time, stores don't even prosecute for that. And yeah, it's technically a crime, but is it going to get prosecuted? Are we going to waste all that taxpayer money for 2-cent bubblegum shoplifting? No. Mm-hmm. Now I'm breaking that to an extreme, I realize. But some of these, like doing the donuts and stuff, and I don't know the specifics of that. But is it reckless driving? It probably could be.
Sure.
Are they going to prosecute it? Maybe not.
Yeah.
If there's not strict video evidence showing them coming like within inches of hitting somebody, mm-hmm. and that person testifying in court that they mm-hmm. specifically at that moment felt in danger of their lives, mm-hmm. A lot of the times what we hear from the attorneys is it lacks jury appeal. Mm. That's a very common statement we hear. This case lacks jury appeal. Basically, yes, it's illegal. Yes, we could prosecute it. But if we take it in front of a jury, they're not going to buy it. So we're not going to waste our time because they have a humongous caseload and they have to weigh. am I going to spend a month on this case that is 25% when I have a case that I can spend a month on that's 90% winnable? You know, they have to weigh their time. And, you know, it's sad because monetarily, we don't have enough attorneys. We don't have enough cops. Some of the cases don't get prosecuted. And we take the heat for that all the time. The attorneys take the heat for it. And it happens a lot. But sometimes it does happen. We need to get more officers. We need to get more attorneys. But we don't have enough judges, you know, and like right now, our population is exploding.
Right.
Crime is going to grow with our population, and we just, you know.
Yeah, it does seem like one of our biggest challenges is,
and it's frustrating for us too, you know.
Yeah.
Because we're, you know, as officers, we're stuck in the middle.
Right.
We have the citizens that we work for, and we want to do everything for them. And then we have the attorneys that we want to give them a great case.
Right.
We want to write a great report with all the elements of the crime that they to prosecute. We want to do good interviews, turn in good evidence, make sure everything's processed perfectly, but we make mistakes. And sometimes I'll lose a case because I didn't add, you know, I forgot a statement, or I wrote something wrong, or I didn't collect that. I didn't collect item A and I grabbed B instead or whatever. And I didn't know at the time, but later on, looking at the whole totality of everything, I should have grabbed A and B, but I didn't know at the time, you know, you didn't see it. We didn't win the case, you know, and then the victim gets mad, and I'm like, you know, I apologize. I did the best I could at the time. And, you know, it was a mistake. I apologize, but
it is a little bit of an impossible situation.
It's hard.
You know, you've got so many competing interests. You've got public safety, you've got the rights of the accused and due process. Then you've got budgetary restraints and the fact that we've grown so fast and we don't have enough resources in terms of officers or prosecutors. It feels a little bit impossible, but we're almost out of time, and I don't want to shortchange you. You are in the middle of a campaign. What do you want my listeners to know about you that we haven't already covered?
Well, the biggest thing is being an officer and going into law enforcement is we don't do it to get rich. And we don't do it. I didn't do it for the money. I did it because I really cared. And and you could review my body camera video. And, you know, when body cameras came out, I was one of the biggest proponents of it. I said, record everything I do, please. I know I'm being recorded. I'm not going to say something stupid.
Right.
Well, I would be a lot less likely to say something stupid.
Right. We're going to be a little more careful.
And you know, stuff slips every once in a while. But the other thing is, every time somebody complained about anything I did, it was on camera, it exonerated me every time. And I don't mind that. And I always told people, I work for you. I've always worked for the people. I've always gone out of my way to be an advocate for victims and for the citizens that I've worked for. I was in the military. I've always served my community. I've served my country. I've been very proud to do that. I've been a leader among my peers. I've always reminded people, who do you work for? You work for these people. You listen to them. Don't make your boss mad. That's the quickest way to get in trouble. The citizens are your boss. Do the best you can. I'm not the guy that shows up and says, I'm from the government, I'm here to help you. But I am from the government, and I have resources that you pay for. I know how to work these resources. How can I help you solve your problem? And I'm not here to solve your problem for you. I'm here to help you solve your problem so that the next time you have this problem, you know how to solve it. You don't have to keep calling me every time. You know what I mean? I'd rather teach the man how to fish so he can catch his own fish from then on. And if he needs to use a government fishing pole to do it, he paid for it with his tax dollars. I can supply that government fishing pole and teach him how to use it, and he can fish. You know what I mean? And that's what we do. And I can teach him how to bait the hook, and he can go for it, he or she. And we go for it. That's me. That's the basis I come from. And at the sheriff's office needs to become a family again. I'm a huge advocate in being family and helping each other, and we need to do better for the citizens. Right now, graduating seniors, less than 3% of graduating seniors are eligible for military service due to drug use, criminal issues, or mental or physical incapabilities. By the time they reach 21 years old and can legally carry a handgun and can test for law enforcement, because you have to be 21 when you graduate the academy to be a cop, less than 1% of 21-year-olds in the United States are eligible to test for law enforcement.
Wow.
Law enforcement needs to own that. My son, our son, is 27. He just recently got a job full-time with Honeywell as an electrician in their aerospace division. He works on engine parts and electronic parts for airplanes. And the reason I'm going here is because I'm not trying to go into the schools and recruit everybody to go into law enforcement or the military. But the testing to be an electrician for Honeywell was almost identical to what I did in law enforcement in the military, except the physical part. He didn't have to run the 1.5 miles. Okay. But I mean, they check your credit because they want to see if you're a responsible person.
Right.
And they want to see if you can be bribed. If you have bad credit and a bad credit score and you're hurting financially, somebody could walk up to you with 20 grand and you just about do anything, is the thinking. Law enforcement's the same way. Your drug testing, and a lot of mental testing and your dexterity and a lot of that. So these kids get to the testing for law enforcement or the military and they fail because they just smoked weed or they got a DUI or, they have criminal issues or whatever. And they say, and we turn them down and they say, well, I didn't know I could have a DUI or a suspended license. I can't be a cop. Well, that sounds dumb to us, common sense is not that common, I've learned, but nobody's telling them this. Nobody in school, they don't learn how to balance a checkbook. They don't know how to fill out an application for a job. They don't know how to balance their accounts. They don't know how to fill out a job application. They don't know that they can't have a felony and not be a cop or drive a truck for UPS or have a good job. I want to mentor these kids to be good people. And if I can ignite a spark in their heart to be volunteers. So later on, they have a good job. Maybe they're a YouTuber or a podcaster. And on the weekends, they go feed the homeless, or they volunteer at the soup kitchen, or they volunteer at the homeless shelter, or they volunteer in their community, picking up trash, anything to volunteer to give back to their community, not to make them, drill everybody to go into law enforcement or the military or work for the government. That's not my goal, but I want to make these kids good people, to grow up to be good people and to serve their fellow man. That's all.
Awesome. Well, Mike, thank you so much for coming on the show. If people want to learn more about you or support your campaign, where should they go?
My website is crawfordforsheriff.com, all letters. And on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff, it's Mike Crawford for Sheriff.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And thank you to the viewers for spending your time with us today. I really appreciate it. Get out and enjoy some of this beautiful Arizona weather.
Thanks so much for listening to the Modern Divorce Podcast. Remember, anything you've heard today or anything you read online is not the replacement for actual consultation with an attorney and does not create an attorney-client relationship. Even if you called in and we spoke to you, you were anonymous and we don't have your details and you have not become a client of Modern Law. However, we would love to speak with you, or you should seek out the advice of legal counsel or counseling or any other expert near you. And if you have an idea for a show topic or you need to speak with an attorney in Arizona, you can reach me at info@mymodernlaw.com.